who are more in the beginner category. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just put my little lines here, and that's because I want to be sure that I'm composing to where the surface would be revealed by the frame if I were to frame it. So I just always plan for that. And it's just, you know, 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 inch in. And after I start my painting, I go ahead and go clear the edges. Oh, wait, you can't see.
It's close, Jeneane, but it may not matter. We can't, there you go.
Mhm.
Now you can just shift it a little. Yeah, perfect.
Perfect.
It's not straight though.
It's good.
All right. Okay. So then when I start my still life, or any composition, so it talked about this so many times, but it doesn't hurt to hear it all again. That the first step is like, I did not take this photograph, I should just say, because I don't have any of my stuff here. I don't have my lights, I don't have my stuff. So, but the first step is that you would figure out your composition, like either your setup that then you took a photograph of. And then when you start drawing here, this is the second step of composition is actually getting it on your paper. And so I want to kind of get everything going all at once and make sure that, so I don't want to finish anything yet. Oh my gosh, like, can I not draw? It's possible, I guess. So I'm just sort of feeling my way around, but what I'm not doing is finishing one thing and then starting the next thing and then finishing the next thing and on, because this is like, if this doesn't go well, it's not that hard to get rid of. And when you, yeah, anyway, so I'm figuring out my composition and I'm, yeah, so this is still part of the composition step. So the first and most important step in all paintings is composition, because your painting will never be really more than your composition. Composition is the thing. And I've never, ever in my long painting life painted a banana. So kind of excited. I may find out why I've never painted a banana. You know, I'm sure why I've never painted a banana is they don't last long enough. I've painted 1.5 zillion onions, though, I'll tell you, because they do last long enough.
I just saw my banana painting the other day.
Oh, and brought back fond memories, I hope. I'll tell you, one of the best banana paintings I ever saw. Debbie Lambden, who was one of my students back in the old Burlington days, she did this little bunch of those red bananas, tiny little red bananas. It was incredible, it really was. I mean, I can't remember everything that everyone ever painted, but that I definitely remember. One time I painted this bowl of strawberries and I guess I let it go too long and I came back to my studio and it was a mound, it was a little triangle of strawberries and it was a mound of mold. It was so gross. I couldn't eat strawberries forever after that. Like, oh, it was hideous. So, okay, so now I've moved in, I kind of got my composition started and now I've moved into like the second thing, which is drawing. So I'm going back and I'm trying to make the shapes better and I'm comparing everything. I'm not working on anything too long. So like to figure this out, I've got to know if it's how it compares to that. And then with drapery, I actually got rid of some of the drapery in here. I mushed it out in Photoshop, but there's still quite a bit. So it really actually helps if you're doing drapery. It really helps to have a piece of drapery that has does have stripes on it, like a towel or something. The first really successful drapery I ever did was a towel that had stripes on it. And something about the fabric of the towel just really helped me. Okay, so
Oh, there we go. There's a funny shadow moving
Yeah,
around.
sorry.
Just move. You got rid of it.
yeah, it might come back because it turns out that like this is a 6-foot cable. It turned out the 10-foot cable was a lot of the problem I was having in life. The 10 feet is just too far to go, evidently. And then 6 feet's kind of a little too short. Okay, so if you're working on super light colored paper, you don't want to do this. You don't want to put in the shadows like that, like I just did. You don't want to do that. It just, oh, look at that. Would you look at that? I didn't realize somehow there was a space there. So anyway, the shadows are really important because what they do is they do a couple of things for you. Is that this technique that I paint in is much more of a drawing technique. I mean, not a drawing technique, it's more of a painting technique. And so painting is about big masses of color and stuff, big masses of light and shadow. And so by treating it like a painting right from the start, I have, it's already looking like what it's going to end up as. So it's not a drawing in the sense that usually drawings are about outlines. And then the second reason it's so good is I realized anyway, I realized something really important from Morgan this week, that I was talking about how much harder it is to get light over dark. It's not that the darks are harder to do because like harder to, anyway, what it is it's that the darks, I know most of you know this, but this is the kind of thing I might forget to ever actually mention in a way that was understandable. The darks are physically harder because they have more of the binder in them, which is whatever that stuff is that holds the pastels together. So that's why you have to do light over dark, even though it's so counterintuitive. Because once those light colors get on and start to fill up the weave of the paper, then it's harder to get the dark colors to go on. Yeah, there's another thing I just don't get. Like, even though I'm so careful, I crop this to exactly the right size, it's just not the same. But I shouldn't let that bother me so much, but it's just not. Of course, I could have made a mistake. Maybe this comes over more.
Can you say that thing about light over dark again?
Yeah, that the dark colors are physically harder because, I don't know, they use more binder to hold them. I don't really understand why they need more binder, but that's what it is. The stuff that holds the pastel together is called binder. And I can't remember what it is in pastels, but it'd be like in oil painting, oils are the binder. In watercolors is some stuff called gum arabic, I think is the binder. And then in pastels, there's very little binder to hold them together. You know, they're just pretty crumbly and all. But the darker the color, like the dark reds, dark blues, all the dark colors have more binder in them, and that makes them physically harder and makes them more difficult to put on top of the lighter colors, because the lighter colors have less binder, so they're softer. And that's one reason too, that even if you weren't going to have a whole lot of expensive pastels, it's nice to have some of the like reds. Reds are a really big pain in the neck in pastels. So it's nice to have some softer reds so you can use them. So one of the things I always talk about, like red, because red is such a huge problem in pastels. Red's a problem in everything, honestly. It must be really expensive. And maybe that's the deal about all the darker colors, is that they're more expensive to make. So they use less pigment, more binder. I don't know. Okay, was that good, Barb? Or some rambling on?
Yes, that was helpful. I forgot to unmute myself.
Okay. The other thing that helps me when I'm like drawing like this is that it's hard for me to draw shapes as accurately if I don't have the light and shadow in there. Because I'm more like used to looking at shapes and seeing them as shapes, not outlines. So by putting in all the shadows, I can really sort of see it as a shape. Oh my God, this is so much, but okay. And I do like to smear my charcoal down because otherwise it just gets too annoying. And honestly, I don't usually do this anymore on this paper, but oh, I just hit that thing again. But I did want to just show it to you.
What kind of paper are you using?
Oh, the same thing I always use, that pastel premier. And the one problem is you can't really erase it because it'll just, you know, shred anything you maybe used on it.
Can you use a chamois on it to take off?
You know, I don't even know. I haven't known where my chamois was in so long.
I got one when I got the paper, just in case. I tried it a little bit, but I haven't really tested whether, I thought if I did it gently enough, it might work. And I've also tried using a brush a tiny bit.
Oh, that's a really good idea. Wait,
The chamois does not work very well on this paper.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I use a brush and a rubber eraser thing.
oh, really? A kneaded eraser?
I needed eraser. Yeah, I needed it.
I guess I haven't needed it. But definitely do not do this if you're working on really light colored paper. If you did it on white paper, it's a horrible mess, so don't do it. All right, so I lost my little stripe, but maybe I don't care.
Epson, remind me later.
You talking to us?
Oh, I'm not muted, sorry.
No,
Yeah, my computers went crazy, sorry.
no. I was hoping you were giving us stock tips. Okay, so now what I like to do when I start my painting is I like to start with the lightest light. And what that does is it sets the key to the painting and it makes sure I don't get anything else too light and be unable to then achieve my lightest light. So if you're nearsighted, you can just look over the top of your glasses and you see things much more accurately, bizarrely. So you can really see value better when you can't focus your eyes very well, or you can squint. And that helps you to see the values too. So pretty clearly, I think the lemon is the lightest light. So I'm still not going to start with white. I'm going to start with something else. Because once I use white, I got nowhere to go. So I'm going to say, what kind of white is it? Well, it's a very yellowy white. And I'm also not going to do all the nuances. I'm just going to do the light and the shadow. And then, okay, I think the background is sort of purpley, so I'm going to do that. And this is why, like, I am trying to do parts of what I'm seeing. So I don't know how many pastels I have here, but I'm not trying to find the exact right color. I'm trying to find a first best guess at it. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. And then, oh golly, I don't know, is that some sort of really cool color on here? Also, if you don't want, if it's impossible to draw all these shadows and stuff on here, what you can do then is what makes sense is to start by putting in all the shadows, because if you get a shadow in the wrong place, it's pretty easy to cover it up with a light. But if you get a light in the wrong place, it can be really difficult to cover it up with a shadow. So that's what I recommend also when I'm doing flowers and things, is that I don't really want to draw in all the lights and darks, but in pastel, then when I start the color on the flowers, I do start with the dark areas first. So, golly. Okay, so there's, I got this all screwed up. I'm sorry, I have to fix this. And also, I mean, I do often draw with my pastels, like I could have drawn that with my pastels, but if I make a mistake, then I can't, it's harder to fix it. Especially never, I mean, I really mean never. I usually don't exactly mean never, but never, ever draw with your black pastel because you cannot get rid of it. So I'm redrawing with charcoal. At any time I'm going to draw, I'm using the charcoal. Oh, golly, I am so, I didn't really finish my drawing, evidently. Where are you? Oh yeah, tell me if I get in front of my drawing too much too, because I just don't look that far over. Okay, so. And I said I start with the lightest light, but another thing I might do, and I lost my phone. Another thing I might do is if, like say I really had daffodils or something that was very bright and I wanted to be sure I didn't, like say, okay, so yellow daffodils. So I wanted to be sure I didn't get something else in my painting so yellow that I couldn't achieve my yellow daffodils. Like if I had daffodils and an onion, I really would not start that onion with that yellow, because that would be, it would compete too much with the daffodils. All right, so it's going to start with, say, the shadows. There's a lot of variety in the shadows, but I'm just gonna, oops, I left out a useful light. Yes, there's a lot of variety in the shadows, but I'm gonna ignore as much of it as I can right now and just make the biggest statement I can. And so a lot of times I know I might think to myself, oh, if I just divided this up into more like areas of color or values and stuff, then I would be able to make it better. But what I really think is you have to make it really, you want to, each step you want to make it as good as you can. And then I keep losing what I'm losing it and using it. Yeah, so if you can start it really strong and simple, it's like, I do really agree with what Hinchy said in that quote I used last week, that it's what I'm doing is not simple. It's hard to do this. And it's one of the hardest things, I think, is to know what's important and what's less important when you start a painting. And so that's one of the most important things that you learn over time, is what is essential and what can you leave out.
This is, by the way, looks like a wonderful sailing ship on an ocean. The banana boat on the ocean with the waves. Do you see it? I love it.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go away again.
I don't know if I should be encouraged or discouraged by that. I thought you were going to say, wow, Jeneane, you are just expressing this so well. This is so great. You're just like, this is
Wow,
gonna be the
Jeneane, you're
best.
just expressing this so well. This is so great.
Oh, thanks. That was
That's
good.
what I meant to say.
Oh, okay.
He was just waiting for the red to show up.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Can you help me explain, understand why you used that deep purple for the shadows?
I couldn't think of anything else.
Okay, so you're hoping to go down to something, what, more beige, more something?
I think I said maybe there's always, well, like green. I always say it about green. There's always time for green. And I think there's always time for beige.
Okay,
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start it as big an exaggeration as I can, and then I'll see what I have to do to knock it down.
okay.
So I also think, I don't know, these are such funny little things, but when I took world religion at Oklahoma State University, the professor there, I mean, I know a lot of religious people would not really agree with this, but his theory or his idea about it all was that you have that, like, religion is kind of a mountain, and you start wherever you start, and then you climb that mountain. Well, and so I always had felt that way about the color, like, okay, the peak is maybe the finish, but where you start on the path, which path you choose, dictates your next step. So I could have started this green, it crossed my mind, except I needed the green here. So there's kind of this problem that because I have this color onion, I can't do some things. Certain things are kind of left, are not choices for me, which actually that's a pretty good answer. So if I use purple, but if you started green, well, then you would just go kind of on a different path. And the other thing is I have to start darker because once I've lightened it too much, I kind of have nowhere to go. And I always just feel like I can't see what I'm doing until I get it covered. So I feel like I'm kind of painting in the dark until the whole thing is covered. And then I can start to see, well, what I need to do. All right, I had this big plan. I was going to put my pastels I was using not right back in the pastel box, but so far already I've wrecked that plan. Okay. Yeah. So the thing is, I mean, I studied with a lot of different people, but the main people I studied with and the biggest influence on me is the colorist or the people painting the visual or, paint what you see, not what you know group. And so if I think I see a little purple, I'll just really make it purple. And if I think it's a little red, then I'll make it red. So I'm really just slamming it on and then figuring I can pull it back later. And another thing about that is that it's, oh God, okay. All right, I'll just do that because don't be afraid, Jeneane. I think it's easier to tone things down than to make them stronger after you've started it dull. So if you start it with grays, I mean, it'd be interesting, but if you start with just grays, unless you're doing some sort of underpainting like Emily did this week, if you start it like, I think I tell you about this all the time, but I'll just tell you again. There was that guy in New York that also taught in Stowe, Frank Mason, and he had everybody start with the ghost is what it was called. And I'm telling you, most of them could not get out of the ghost. He used really.
Did you say ghost or goat?
Ghost, yeah, start with the ghost.
What is the ghost?
It was like, mostly it was figure painting because it was at the Art Students League. So it'd be a figure, and what it would be is instead of using like really strong lights and darks, you start with all these middle tones. And then eventually you add your lights and darks. But people just didn't seem to be able to. And they would start with this sort of ghostly figure, and then it would just stay a ghostly figure because they just you couldn't, every time you try to put a light or a dark on, it would just look, I know this because I studied with him for 2 weeks. But I couldn't stand it. So, but I also actually saw a lot of his demonstrations and stuff. So it's unfair to say I only studied with him for 2 weeks, but I only painted with him for 2 weeks because what they saw and what was there were so different that it just was really hard for me. And he's got a lot of really great students though. I don't know if you know Karen Winslow, who lives in Jeffersonville. She studied with him. Fiona studied with him. Yeah, a lot of people. Okay, so now
I love Fiona's work.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. But of course, she also studied with me. Most of these people I'm talking about, like the Frank Mason students, they only studied with him. So that meant that they just had no other influences. Because he pretty well told them. Okay, so like this is a gray, so I can use a gray over that. I just got that too light, sadly. But I'll see if I can do anything else now. Okay, so I started, and each of my objects now is in 2 colors. And a color for the light and a color for the dark. And then what I want to do is go back and make the colors, each of those colors better, not maybe try to split them down more, although the shadows are, anyway, not divide it up more, just go ahead and make each area better. So the first time over, that was the lay-in, and then
class. I'll be back in a little later.
this is the second lay-in of coming back and just trying to make each area better. I don't know what's wrong with the drawing there, but something is really wrong. Okay, so yeah, and I just, moving right along here. I'm gonna divide this up. These guys look so orangey to me, but this one does look greener, so it's gonna put some of that green in there. When I'm working, I mean, I'm not exactly afraid. It's like, who cares, sort of, it's just a painting. But
That's right.
I'm a little nervous sometimes when I'm here with you because I'm not alone. But I also feel like, why not push it a little bit so that you are a little nervous all the time? Like, if you're just feeling safe. I'm nervous. I don't know what the heck to do.
Yeah,
Jeneane,
I find myself being too much in the safe category.
Oh, well, different personalities. Also.
Jeneane,
Yes.
it's Judy. You always told me to paint what I feel, not what I see.
Who told you that?
You did about 20 years ago.
That don't even sound like me. Okay. Yeah,
And
well,
I
paint what you feel. I'm not painting what I'm feeling. I'm not feeling anything. I have no kind of emotional attachment to this. Like, it might be different if it was animals or something like you do so much, Judy. I have zero emotional attachment. All I am looking at is the colors and trying to figure out what the colors are, which is kind of interesting because I hadn't really thought of it. Okay, so I had light and shadow. Now I'm going to look for the half light, or some people might call it the half shadow, that starts to make that look round. Okay, so that half light was too dark. So and these reflections and stuff, I'm not getting involved in that yet. All right, so that made me realize, well, I let this get too light, so I'm just going to make it darker. Oh yeah, people have been asking me kind of constantly how to get looser. And I do really think that's a function of time. But if you wanted, you could do this. You could say, I'm not using the tip of my pastel anymore. I'm not going to use the tip. I'm only using the flat side. And then in oil paints or other painting, the trick, which this is what Robert Henry made his students do. He, oops, not you. He made them paint with, let's see, was he the palette knife one? I can't remember, but I think he made them paint with really big brushes, like 2 inches wide, so they couldn't tighten up. And someone else, I'm confused, but I guess Henry Hinchy, who I quoted last week, he made people paint with palette knives. They never could use a brush. So there are kind of tricks you can do to help yourself paint. Oh my gosh, look how late it got. Okay, I'm just gonna try to make these 2 things better and then I'll stop, but then I'll come back to it. And this really I try to go a little slower, honestly, than usual. Now I used to never use gray. Like that, I really didn't, but that's a gray right there. So, and I think that's actually all too light. So I don't know, maybe I'm trying to knock it back down again.
It looks sort of greenish too.
Oh yeah, it does look really green. Yeah, it does. but I do think I let it get too light. So you have to all the time be looking at everything in your painting, not just at the thing you're working on, because it just all varies and it all depends, so, on what's with something. Ooh, hate that when the thing you're using crumbles into dust. Okay, so this in here is definitely darker than the banana, and I have to fix that drawing a little bit. Okay, and probably this is just too yellow, so I'll see what I can do to that to make it, I don't want to make it lighter, I really don't, so, but maybe I could knock out some of the yellow, not with that. Oh, and somehow I lost my little doodah. Just want to put something there. Looks like a bizarre pumpkin. Okay, so I lay it in once. That was, I covered the whole thing, and now I'm laying it in again. I broke it down a little bit, like in here I made 3 colors. And don't know what to do. So like when you don't know what to do, like I just sort of, golly, hate when I just do whatever crosses my mind. So if I say, well, you know, I think it's got some more green or something in it, then I just do that. Because I said before that I believe thinking is quite overrated. So you can sit here and think about it forever, but then when you actually do something, then you have a better answer right away, instead of like just cogitating about it and wondering and fretting. No fretting. Well, I'm fretting all the time. That's actually quite true. See, now that's just 2 colors, but that wasn't even red or anything, but it already won't go down on it. So, oh, thank you. Oh, I lost that. I don't know. I just decided I would try putting this here because I wasn't sure if it was going to be too light. And I think I just have to do one more thing about my onion. So you remember back in the day, the onion was the first thing I started. I really made it just too light overall. And that can kind of be a problem. Yeah, I know it's too dark now, but that's better than. The thing is, onions are a little different. The light doesn't just bounce off the surface like it does with these other things. It kind of goes down in and then comes back out. Yeah, I feel like I let a lot of things get a little too light, so I just want to come back and. I can't even figure out what's wrong with the drawing here, but I'll just have to redraw in a minute. Okay, so, all right, so there's step 1. Any questions before I stop it?